What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome in to another episode of the Triple Play Fantasy Football Show, a proud member of the Fantrax Podcast Network and the FantraxHQ.com fam. D. Mendy here, joined tonight by the doc himself, the man of many Super Bowl bets. What's going on?
Yeah, I usually talk myself up. I lost every single Super Bowl bet, but a lot of them were Chiefs related, so it was a hedge. And probably a lot of people lost as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were putting a lot of stuff on Chiefs bets, so you're not alone in that regard. But also joining from the normal crew is the smooth operator himself. It's the Brad Stradamus, Brad Kilwer. What's going on?
Nothing much, man. It's been a while. It's a beautiful day to talk football, man. I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Yeah, we missed you last week, man. It's always you're the steady, calm presence that we need on this show.
I feel like it's been a few weeks I've missed.
Yeah, I think you missed 2 out of the last 3. It's definitely not the same without you not being here, man. But we don't know Johnny this week, so we had to step up and bring in somebody better. And joining the pod, we welcome in a man who's not sure if he's ready for his second child that's on the way after his daughter's meltdown at the bowling alley last week. A Fantrax and FantasyPros baseball and football writer, a girl dad. This dude is about to be jet flying into some hard-hitting Super Bowl and fantasy analysis. We welcome in Justin Johnson. What's going on, man?
Hey guys, how's it going? I appreciate you guys having me on. You guys are doing big things with this show, man. I see y'all on my Twitter timeline all the time, and it's pretty crazy following up guys like Matthew Berry and JJ Zacharias. And I can't say I'm gonna bring that level of knowledge and just overall abilities in the fantasy football community, but I'm excited to kick it with you guys and talk whatever we're gonna talk.
Yeah, dude. I mean, to be honest, you just started now going with Fantasy Pros. You're the real deal, man. Fantrax and Fantasy Pros, you're double dipping into 2 of the hardest hitting places to give analysis. I mean, how did you where were you doing when you got the call from Fantasy Pros? Because that had to be exciting.
Actually, I just kind of reached out looking to, maybe branch out a little bit just to try a little side gig. I'm only part-time with them, so they're not hiring me on as a, full gig where I'm going to go away from Fantrax or anything like that. Fantrax, no, we're staying at Fantrax, man.
Hey, I like it. Loyalty.
Yeah, no, man. Fantrax, Eric and Doug and all of them, they gave me my first real shot at, all right, not to take away from Michael at SP Streamer, if he listens. Sorry, buddy. But Fantrax gave me, my first real chance to get out there in the community. And I definitely won't be going anywhere anytime soon from them. Going to hopefully get some good stuff going on Fantasy Pros while also contributing to Fantrax.
I love that.
Put the best content I can out there.
It's great content. You had an article recently, I know it's a different sport, but for baseball, where you had the top 5 tool players, or I think it was something like that, and you got 100 likes on it. People respect your stuff, man. You put out some gold, and it's for free too. You could be charging for what you're doing.
Who do you got a number one? Who's your number 1 5 tool? Let's start with a little baseball talk.
Man, I told you before the show I'm a Falcons fan, and I'm a Braves fan too, so I got to go with my boy Acuna. Man, okay. Without a doubt. I like I told David, I draft Ronald Acuna. Whenever I have the chance, I draft him. I don't care who it is. I don't care where I'm picking. Even in 2018, everybody told me not to pick him in the first round. I said, screw this. I'm going Acuna, and I did. But not to get way too far into baseball. I know we're here for football.
You guys need a new manager that's not worried about all the bat flips and stuff. They need to let him be himself.
Yeah, I know, man. It's one fun and exciting team in Atlanta, at least. I can't say the same for much of anybody else.
So before we dive in here, I just got a question. So what's the jet flying part of your name? I was always curious.
Okay, so I don't know how familiar you guys are with WWE, WWF. It's a big Ric Flair spill. He goes off on this huge rant. It's really popular. Yeah, exactly. He goes off on this big tangent, and me and my buddies back in college, it wasn't me. I wouldn't be the one that led the charge, but one of my buddies would always just shut the bar down for a second, tell everybody to listen up, and he would just go off on that Ric Flair tangent, and everybody would go wild afterwards. And it just always kind of stuck with me. The jet flying part, just my name starts with J, and whenever he says jet flying, it's towards the end of the spill. And whenever I made my Twitter name, it's just what I decided to do. I didn't want to be, the normal JJ Roto or JJFF or anything like that. I figured I would do something different.
No,
So
I
this
love that.
entire time, I thought it was JJ the jet plane, like that cartoon growing up.
Oh wow!
I thought it was like
I forgot about that.
I thought it was like a spin-off of that. This is news
You
to
just
me.
gave me you just had like a childhood memory unlocked. I remember like eating oatmeal in the morning and watching JJ the jet plane.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, it's not JJ the jet plane. It's trying to bring a little swag to my profile with a Ric Flair drip.
I loved it, man.
I love it.
I got to give also a shout out to Chris Clegg for giving me the story about your daughter's meltdown, because I was trying to find something funny to hook in, and he was like, "Yeah, bring up that story."
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was an interesting day. It was her first time at the bowling alley, and she expected to roll the ball every single time. And if it wasn't her, it was the end of it, man. She would scream, snot coming out of her nose. It was brutal. We left halfway through the first frame. I think we were supposed to go 2. Yeah, it wasn't good.
I got to tell you, I love that she's wired to expect greatness at the beginning. That's a good sign.
She gets that from me and her mom. We're both pretty competitive.
It's a good sign. It's a good sign.
I love that, man. Well, we're glad you're here because the offseason is finally here, and we're firing up off-season content like there's no tomorrow. When draft day comes and the season is here, we want to make sure you're in tip-top shape to take down your league. No BS short-term podcast fixes here. No. That means subscribing to this podcast, listening to these episodes, getting all that info you need, and ultimately seeing results, baby. The process begins when you do. And in today's episode, we have the Super Bowl 55 recap show. And there's a lot to break down what we saw this past Sunday. We've got 5 topics from this game that we're going to break down with these guys right here. Things that are up for debate or things that could potentially have changed and the outcome for both sides. You never know. Stay tuned for that. Tons of great stats and discussion coming your way. After that, we'll go to our question of the week. Would you rather lose multiple Super Bowls in a row or not make any at all? If so, how many in a row would you draw the line at and tap out? And as always, we have our game of the week revealed at the end of the show. So if you guys are ready to get another episode started, then man, we're here to do it for you. Let's do it. Yeah.
You've been doing those vocals, David. That was a long hold. I like it.
Practicing. Let's start off with some news and notes. And
look at the production value.
I appreciate it, man. I'm stepping it up. I feel like we're getting big time now.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, it was all for Justin, actually. So I just wanted to impress him.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. But I'm ready to see the website whenever you get that going too. I saw that Twitter post.
Ooh, yeah. It's a little sneak preview. That'll hopefully be up by the end of the month.
We didn't even tell him to say that.
So a lot of kind of quarterback news right now. Justin, we're gonna have to have you plug our stuff, man. You're the better plug than we are. But there's a lot of quarterback news right now. Let's start off with Carson Wentz, who actually I was prepared to change my entire notes. I thought he already would have been traded by now, but he's expected to have a new team soon. They said within a few days. That's been a few days and he's still not traded. So we'll see what happens with that. The Eagles are said to be looking for a Matthew Stafford type package per the ESPN.com duo of Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen. The Bears and the Colts have expressed the most interest. Brad, what do you think? Where do you think he's going? And do you think he is going to have any type of fantasy value where he goes, similar to what he had at his peak with Philly?
You know, it's interesting. My day job used to be in finance, right? So the thing about stocks that we would always say is, you know, any stock can be a good stock depending on what you pay for it. And I think the same is true with, you know, these assets in football. It's like, I would love to have a Carson Wentz or a Derek Carr as my quarterback for Washington if we didn't have to fork up, you know, a first round pick for him, which is, it's seeming like that's the going rate for these guys. So Carson Wentz is coming off a terrible year. But if they want a first round pick for him, it's a no-go for me. If, you know, he was somebody you could just sign off the waiver wire, or somebody that you could, you know, if he was a free agent, you could sign for cheap, that's completely different. In terms of fantasy assets, Carson Wentz is not even on my radar. Derek Carr is a lot more interesting to me because I think there's there's probably 15 teams that would see an upgrade with Derek Carr as their quarterback. So I think it's clear to me, like, he's an above average quarterback. If 15 is the mark, right? So, depending on where he lands, he could add value. I'd draft him in, the middle to back end of the draft if I could. But I think neither of those guys are somebody that you reach for in a draft like a Desean Watson.
Well, yeah, we're actually going to touch on Desean Watson in a second, so it's a good lead in there, Brad. JJ, what about you, man? What do you, for Carson Wentz, for Derek Carr, do you expect both to be traded? Do you have an idea where you think they're going, and what do you expect their fantasy values to be next year?
So I definitely think Carson Wentz is gone. Where to? I think that's going to be either probably Indianapolis. I don't see the Patriots paying for him. It's possible, but I doubt it.
Chicago's in the mix.
Chicago looks like the most likely right now. I think Indianapolis would be the best fit for him. If he goes to Chicago, I'm not touching him, especially because Allen Robinson wants out of there, and he's probably gonna get out of there. If Wentz goes to Indianapolis, I am somewhat interested because of that offensive line, and that run game can kind of relieve some of that pressure that he experienced in Philadelphia. I mean, I think he was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL this year. Some of that was his fault. He held on the ball way too long, made some horrible throws this season. I think he does have value personally because he can move. First of all, he can run the ball. He's deceptively athletic. I think he has more value than Derek Carr. As Brad was saying, he likes Derek Carr a little better. I think I prefer Wentz of the two. If he did go to Indianapolis, man, I would probably put him towards top end QB2 range, maybe with a more upside. I mean, we've seen bigger upside from Wentz before. He was a top 3 or 4 or 5 quarterback one year in 2018, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got the potential, man. He's just got to have the tools around him. He's got to have time in the pocket, time to make plays on his feet. I think the potential is there. Am I banking on that happening? Absolutely not. After what he showed this season, I can't say I'm a Wentz truther by any means. I do think there is some untapped potential there. As far as Derek Carr, I mean, he's okay. I don't think anything special of him. I mean, I would say, Brad probably a little higher on him than I am. I would probably put him more towards the, average to below average range. I don't think he does anything necessarily wonderful. I mean, he's decent at what he does. He's not a game changer, especially in fantasy. He's pretty boring. I don't even know who I would compare him to, man. Like I said, I'm a Falcons fan, and Matt Ryan's obviously been great in fantasy, but I mean, I would kind of put the two on a similar scale with Derek Carr probably behind him. And the only reason Matt Ryan's better is because of who he has at wide receiver.
Exactly.
That's
what I'm thinking. Like, if you put Derek Carr in Atlanta.
Yeah. With that said, though, I'd rather have Matt Ryan than Derek Carr for the next 2 or 3 years. I'd rather the Falcons just go ahead and draft a quarterback of the future at pick 4. I'm not huge on Derek Carr, and I would honestly call him a middle tier to, I wouldn't call him middle tier quarterback too. So somewhere around, the 20s, early 20s, late teens.
If you put Matt Ryan in Oakland, where Nelson Aguilar was his number 1 wide receiver, do you think he'd have better or worse stats than Derek Carr?
I think Matt Ryan, it'd probably be similar, but I would take Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan just kind of understands the nuances and everything a little better of the game, where to be, where to put the ball, where the plays are going to happen. I think I haven't really looked up Derek Carr's pressure numbers, but if Matt Ryan gets a clean pocket, man, he's a good quarterback. It's just whenever. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, it's whenever he doesn't have a run game, and when he gets down into the freaking end zone, he can't hit anybody in the freaking red zone for touchdowns. That's always been Matt Ryan's problem. I do think he'd be better than Derek Carr, though.
The one thing I'll say, and then I want to get Doc in here, is I feel like Matt Ryan is not good under pressure. So I feel like if you put him in any situation where he's getting rushed and not any type of offensive line, he's not going to be able to succeed. He's not mobile in the pocket. And I feel like one of those guys that just gets jittery feet back there, not kind of stepping into his throws as much, just takes the sacks. So that would be one thing where I would be like, I think I could see Derek Carr better than him if it's a situation where the offensive line isn't as good. But Doc, I want to get you in here. What are your thoughts on the Carson Wentz drama and then Derek Carr, because his name's been hot?
Yeah, so with Carson Wentz, I think it's interesting because he's due a $10 million bonus if he's on the Eagles of the third day of the league year, which is March 19th. So that's the deadline, basically a month and change that they need to get him out. He's due a big contract, and the Eagles are losing leverage by day, and I think other teams know that. They're going to wait for the asking price to go down because it's uncomfortable in Philly because you know that Jalen Hurts is going to be his replacement. Unlike what we saw with Detroit, where Stafford ended on good terms, and they basically wanted to do right with each other. So I think as we get closer to that March 19th date, that more teams are going to be aggressive for Wentz's services, but probably not offering a first-round pick plus players, maybe conditional picks, a 2 and a 3. Fantasy-wise, I'd rather still have him than Derek Carr because I think he has some mobility. Derek Carr, I think, is a better real-life quarterback. But if I'm the Raiders, I would have Derek Carr one more year. I mean, they played pretty competitive games. They were the only team to beat the Chiefs in the regular season. And I mean, they traded away Khalil Mack. They got a lot of picks in return. And I still think they're kind of in the rebuilding phase. And I don't think that they're a quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl. And Derek Carr isn't the reason why they lost games.
The one show that John's not on, the Raider fan that can tell us.
I'm curious, so to any one of you that wants to answer this, what do you think has been the difference from Carson Wentz last year and this year? Like, why has he taken such a big step down?
I think the offensive line is not nearly as good as it once was. You look at his skill position players, he has injuries, just guys are rotating in and out. I mean, he had Travis Fulgham as his number one for half the year.
That doesn't explain why Jalen Hurts has done well. I know he can, get out of the pocket a little more, but.
So this is what my thinking too is Matthew Stafford was regarded as very high among his teammates for playing through injuries. People want to play with him. You've never heard those reports for Carson Wentz. Like even when he went down and Nick Foles won, the locker room gravitated towards Nick Foles when Carson Wentz got hurt and then Foles took over and they had that playoff stretch. It's like players gravitated towards Foles. And I think when you step back and realize with the backup, the players feel more connected. They don't try as hard. Maybe they don't dive for those 50-50 balls or, they don't run their routes till the end because they're not as motivated. I don't think Carson Wentz is as good a leader as the team wants him to be for how much money he's making and for the position he plays.
That's fair enough. Let's move on because we got a lot of stuff we got to get to here. And let's go to another quarterback that's disgruntled in his situation. We touched on it a couple weeks ago, but a lot has kind of transpired since then. And the Houston Texans basically telling every team that they are not trading Desean Watson, according to sources with ESPN. The standoff with the team and its franchise quarterback is set to continue. Watson wants out of Houston and has asked for a trade. And Houston, again, is denying the request and will not even answer calls on Desean Watson. So we have a lot of drama going on here. Obviously, a little more prevalent a couple weeks ago, but it's still there. It's still going on, even though it's not being talked about as much right now. JJ, I'll start with you first. What are your thoughts with the Desean Watson thing going on? Are you on his side? Are you on the Texans side? Do you think a trade ends up happening? What are your thoughts with everything?
Oh man, this is a tough situation. I think we all understand what the Houston Texans organization is all about, and it's not really representative of what anybody really wants to see in the game today. They just seem like they're just ran back in the 1940s, man. I don't know how to describe it otherwise. Desean Watson, from all accounts, man, he's a great kid. He's always giving back to the community. He's a great leader. Doesn't ever have any issues. He's quiet off the field normally. And then all of a sudden we have this issue right after he signs a huge contract. I mean, something's wrong, and I think it's on the Texans, man. So I'm not blaming Desean at all in this situation. I think it's completely just what he's doing because he obviously thinks there's a bigger issue going on. And I mean, if you listen to JJ Watt or anybody else in the organization, everybody has a problem with them. So I mean, there's a big issue. I'm on Desean Watson's side. I think he gets traded. I'm not sure. They have so much leverage on that contract. I don't remember the exact numbers, but they can fine him all the way up through OTAs. A good bit of money. I can't remember the exact amount.
It's like 80 something million. They can void off his contract.
Yeah, man. It's not quite like these running backs. They always wind up showing up and everything. Normally, they normally report to camp, except Le'Veon Bell that one year. They'll normally always show up. I think if it came down to it and the Texans wanted to play hardball, I think Desean would wind up being there for his teammates, if anything. He just seems like he's that kind of guy. I personally don't think he's going to get traded.
Doc, what are your thoughts? I want to have Brad go last on this one. Go ahead, Doc.
History is a way of repeating itself. This is a similar situation to what Trent Williams did with the Washington football team. He held out his services, which is the ultimate negotiation tactic that players can use. You can't force them to play. They don't care if they're losing money. Desean Watson is making a shit ton from endorsements. So he doesn't really care if he's losing that money or not. With the Texans, you're losing value because the Washington football team traded Trent Williams for a 3rd and a 5th round pick when they had offers for a 1st round. So I understand that Desean Watson's a better player and he plays a premium position, but I don't think that you're going to probably get better offers than you are now. It's not like he's a head case like an Antonio Brown. He's someone that's given his all to the team, and I think the organization has shown that they don't have his back. And trade him now, get some value, do what's right, and try to rebuild the image of the team.
Brad, I also want to ask you this, along with your thoughts as well. This goes with Carson Wentz because Carson Wentz is in a similar situation as Desean Watson. For any quarterback, because quarterbacks are the ones that get the humongous deals.
Mm-hmm.
For any quarterback that gets a huge deal and then wants out of that contract before their contract, is there something that needs to go in the CBA for owners going forward? Or is that something that's not as much of concern? Because again, you have Wentz and Watson both under contract for multiple more years, and they're both trying to ask for trades pretty early in their deals. And the team that would trade them have to take a lot of dead money on if they do trade them. So again, any quarterback that signs these deals is going to put their team in that situation. Brad, your thoughts on the whole Desean Watson thing, and is this something that you think going forward should have a different way of being adjusted? What do you think?
So to answer your question on the contract, my answer is absolutely not. I think contract is almost a misnomer because if it was contract, that would mean, you're obligated to fulfill it, right? The team would be obligated to pay, the player would be obligated to play, and the duration of the contract. The team can cut or trade Desean Watson whenever they want. Like, it's not actually a contract. They're not obligated to pay him the amount of money. Now, he's so good that they gave in to a no trade clause for him. So he can pick and choose where he's going to get traded. So that's a little bit of leverage on his end. I think this is a fascinating case study in leverage on both sides because, if I'm Desean Watson, I'm not going to let my prime years waste away taking hits in Houston when I have a no trade clause. They can trade me away. And, you look at guys like J.J. Watt and Andre Johnson and what they've said about the organization and how they treat players. It definitely makes sense why he's disgruntled right now. And, this goes for each and every one of us. If we don't want to work somewhere, we can always leave. Like, that's just a basic fundamental right. So for them not to be able to do that, I don't think that's fair at all. So I understand where Desean Watson's coming from. I think it's perfectly okay. I don't think he's being a crybaby. I don't think he's being, a diva or anything like that. If you're gonna put your body on the line for a company, it should be the company you want to put your body on the line for. Doesn't matter how much you're getting paid. None of that. You have the right to choose how you're going to spend your time. Now, if I'm Houston, quite frankly, I'm not trading him because they're rebuilding. It's not like they're going for a championship. Let's say he holds out. Fine. We'll go ahead and void your contract and we'll be terrible and we'll get a top pick and we'll rebuild that way. They have no incentive to trade him because he's under contract. And if I'm Desean Watson, I'm saying, okay, fine, I just won't play. My value is not going to go down if I sit out because I'm a top 5 quarterback, and those don't grow on trees. Whenever I come back, I saw, Jim Irsay was clamoring for Andrew Luck to come back, and he hasn't played in a year. Like if you have the body of work that Desean Watson has put in, you're always going to be in demand. And I think that Houston can get a haul for him. They can get, 2-3 first-round picks to the right team if they want to. It just depends on if Desean Watson wants to go there. So I think it's fascinating that both parties have leverage, both Desean Watson and the Houston Texans, because both people can get what they want done, and they are in no rush to do it.
It's very interesting thoughts there. A great discussion on a lot of moving quarterback parts, and it's going to be continuing all offseason. But if you like all this offseason content, make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button wherever you find your podcasts. Subscribe once and get every future episode we have for free. Want to hear more Triple Play? Great news for you. We have a fantasy baseball and a basketball show that you can check out, available anywhere you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the content, how about lighting up the Apple Podcast app with a 5-star rating and review to support the show? Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Triple Play Fantasy. Eric and Brad run our social media and provide daily questions, bad takes, and of course, our weekly episode drops. When it comes to podcasts, I can't imagine one with more options than fantasy football. You have Devy, Dynasty, Redraft. That's 3 types right there. At the end of the day, talking about a ball and some men, there's so much redundancy. Plain Jane's out there, if you know what I'm saying. Why not keep it fresh with the crew who got you to that championship? The podcast that keeps it real and tells you like it is. That's Triple Play. It's where it's at, my friends. If you're not hip already, you will be soon. Keep on joining us for an amazing offseason of football content with no shortage of incredible guests. And thank you to our loyal listeners for your continued support each and every single week. And we're going to jump right into Super Bowl 55 recap show right after this quick break. Super Bowl 55 recap show going in with Eye of the Tiger. So as we talked about at the top of the show, there's a lot to break down from what we saw this past game, this Super Bowl that was kind of a letdown, but there was a lot to break down that we have to talk about. And let's first start with our first point here, and that's the fantasy impact. And Justin, I'm going to start with you. Let's talk about Leonard Fournette specifically. What happened to him as far as his value next year, as far as where you think you'll draft him? And do you think he's back in Tampa Bay?
Man, talk about skyrocketing your stock for next year, man. I mean, he looked like Leonard Fournette, freaking LSU Leonard Fournette out there, scampering around, sprinting past people, catching balls, man, making people miss. I haven't seen that from him in like 2 years. So he is so hard to call next year. I do think Tampa Bay, I saw that they want to re-sign him next year. So if he comes back to Tampa Bay, I think we're still dealing with that same, kind of guessing between, who's going to do good this week, Fournette or Ronald Jones. Jones has been banged up for the past month. So I think Fournette benefited a lot from that. But I do believe somebody out there is going to offer him some money to come in there for a year. If he wants to take a year contract, come in there and try and show a team that he can be, a bell cow back perhaps.
Yeah,
I can't say for sure. I know that's what's going to happen. I got a feeling Tampa Bay is going to try, but they also have, I'm a pretty big Keyshawn Vaughn fan. I really liked his college film. They have him to kind of take over that role Fournette just played. But if he's not ready, then I could definitely see them re-signing Fournette. And if he re-signs with Tampa, I would probably call him like a middle round to early middle round somewhere, maybe 4th, 5th, 6th round, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I think he wants to go back to Tampa. I saw him tweet out today. He said, "Let's run it back," and with like the dude that goes like this or whatever. Say the guy that points to his head, like make a smart decision. So
you mean Eddie Murphy?
That's not Eddie Murphy.
Oh, you're talking about the little meme or whatever?
It's the meme, but it's not Eddie Murphy, Eric.
No, it's not. It's not Eddie Murphy.
Oh
no!
All right. Wow, this is a shock.
How do you not know what Eddie Murphy looks like?
I know what he looks like. It looks exactly like him.
In fairness to Doc, Eddie Murphy might have a meme like that himself. So who knows?
Doc,
they don't show his teeth. They don't show his teeth. That's why.
It doesn't matter. You don't need to see his teeth to know who Eddie Murphy is.
Okay.
Go ahead, Doc. You couldn't redeem yourself. What are your thoughts about Leonard Fournette?
I could see Leonard Fournette taking like a 1-year, $8 million deal to stay with the Bucs. He gets a nice yearly salary. They get a chance to run it back. The only way I could see him leaving is if a team drastically overpays. If a team like, I don't know, the Jets offers him a 4-year, $52 million contract like they did to Le'Veon Bell. Otherwise, I think he's okay taking 1 or 2 year deals, playing with Brady, trying to stat pad and get rings early in his career. And then maybe trying to get one bite of the apple come free agency, maybe even next year.
No, I feel like this is his last chance because he's already got so much mileage on him. I feel like they even brought it up on the Super Bowl broadcast. They said he doesn't have the same explosiveness that Ronald Jones has. I feel like he's got very old legs with the amount of hits he took in college. So I feel like this is probably his last chance to actually get a deal. So I think he wants to go to Tampa. Maybe he'll take less money to go there. Who knows? Brad, what are your thoughts?
So from a fantasy perspective, I look at this as just a singular game, right? It doesn't matter that it's the Super Bowl. He had a very good game. Good for you. He's had those before. That doesn't change where I draft him. In terms of his future, if I were him, I'm like, okay, I just won a Super Bowl. That's off the bucket list. Now it's time for me to get paid and take care of myself. I go to somewhere like, the Steelers or the Jets, somewhere where I can be the bell cow running back. And
Steelers don't pay running backs.
No, they don't. They don't. But, they had a terrible running game this past year, and maybe they're like, okay, that's what we're missing. That's how we get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl. So if you were to pay for a running back, it would make sense to pay for, a Leonard Fournette, somebody that just had a humongous game in the Super Bowl. So if you were to go somewhere like there, where he'd be the number one back, then he starts teetering over the first or the second round draft pick status for fantasy purposes. That's the only way I'm interested in him. If he goes back to the Buccaneers or anywhere else, he's in a timeshare. I don't really care.
All right. I mean, he's the one that's a free agent right now. I think Chris Godwin is as well. I already heard he's supposed to come back to Tampa Bay. So I assume he'll have very similar type of fantasy value next year if he's back with Tampa. I want to move on to the next subject here, and that's the quarterback discussion from this game. And Eric, I'm going to start with you. What grades are you giving Brady and Mahomes, A through F? Be able to explain why. It sounds like a lesson. Be able to explain why you're giving them the grades you are. And then my other questions for you. Cement Brady is the best of all time. And what does this do to Mahomes' legacy himself?
All right, Mr. Mendelson, you teacher, you. I'm going to give Mahomes a B. And I don't like, I'm all for Mahomes slander, but when people say this loss is on him, no, it isn't. The only reason they had a fighting chance was because Mahomes. And that throw of him literally being parallel to the ground and flicking it sideways is something that probably 1 or 2 people on this earth can do. So I think he should have gotten a touchdown on the board. I know his receivers dropped some balls. I know he was running for his life, but he's never put up a game like that in his career before. I know he has turf toe. That's why I'm giving him a B. For Brady, I'm going to give him a B+. I don't think there's too much he had to do. He got bailed out by the refs. There's no crucial throws he made. A lot of the field goal they had, then there was someone in the neutral zone, and then he ended up throwing a touchdown. He had a lot of opportunities. He didn't make any mistakes, but he wasn't the reason they won the game. I think this does cement Brady as the best of all time. I mean, he has more Super Bowls as an individual than any organization does, and he's done it in both the AFC and NFC. If you're going to ask if he's the best statistical or somebody that can do what Aaron Rodgers does, maybe the most flashy, no, but he wins games, and that's what matters. I think it's too early to say what this does to Mahomes' legacy. David, you and I talked the other day.
My God, are you still talking?
No.
I'll just finish with this. You and I talked the other day that him and Russell Wilson now have had the first same 3 years of making the playoffs, winning a Super Bowl, and then losing a Super Bowl to Brady. Wilson hasn't been back since. The Super Bowl hangover for the losers is a real thing. If they can come back and respond well next year, I don't think it's a really detrimental to him. But I do think he's going to need to win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years to still have that elevated status.
All right, so a lot to say. Brad, hopefully you have good information. That's about half the time Eric said, so go ahead.
Well, I might be half the time, but it's because I completely agree with Eric. I give both quarterbacks Bs. I think the whole Mahomes thing, if I learned anything about the Super Bowl, it's that Eric Fisher might be the MVP of that team. Like the fact that he left his position because of injury, and 3 people had to move over, and it affected the offensive line like that, where he had no time. That was incredible to me, because we saw what they did to the Bucks earlier, and that defensive line was great, but they weren't getting to Mahomes like that. So that's one thing. As far as Brady, I give him a B as well. He looks like a professional quarterback. I wasn't wowed. I wasn't like, oh, wow, Tom Brady, he's so amazing. If you look at his air yards per target, it was nothing special. It was a lot of catch and run after the catch. Bad defense by the Chiefs. And, they only got to him, I believe, once. Like they weren't pressuring him at all, so they didn't force him to do anything special. I think if you had put, the top 10 quarterbacks in the league in that position, they would have done the same thing that Brady did. In terms of legacy for Mahomes, it does absolutely nothing. We know he's amazing. He's still amazing. This doesn't change that. Brady, he was probably the best quarterback of all time before this, and he's going to be definitely the best quarterback of all time now. You can't compete with 7 rings. Like Eric said, that's more than any franchise itself. That's absurd. And I just what was the third question?
No, you answered them all. That was
David says that we're going long, but he said, give a grade, be prepared to explain it. We're literally answering your rubric, Mr. Mendelson.
Yeah. I mean, just you can be very efficient with it. A couple of interesting stats for you guys, and I'm sure some people have already read this. Do you guys know how many yards Mahomes ran total in the Super Bowl if you count like laterally, forward, everything?
456.
Yeah, something crazy.
It was like over 450 yards. He also was pressured on 29 of his 56 dropbacks, which is good for 52%, which is the most pressures against any quarterback in NFL history. So that gives you kind of a picture of what Mahomes was kind of under on that day, and he was still extending plays. JJ, all the questions for you, man. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, so I agree mostly with their grades. I was thinking of B for Mahomes as well. I mean, there's not really much more to hit on than that, man. He was out there running around for his life and making some of the most insane throws I've ever seen, despite them not being completed. I mean, I think it was the play right before where he kind of got spun around on the sideline and just launched it up to Byron Pringle in the corner of the end zone. And I thought that was a touchdown for a second, but it hit the ground in front of him and everything. But the fact he was able to move around like that and give him a chance to score a touchdown like that was insane. It's not really fair when you're getting Shaquille Barrett in your face, every single play. He was out there doing what he could, moving around, slinging the ball as best as he could. So I don't knock him down way too much. I do disagree on Tom Brady's grade though. Statistically, maybe he's a B, but he gets an A in my book. Especially when he was out there yelling at the coaches, let's keep this. I think it was when they were towards the goal line, he started yelling at the coaches, hey, we're running the same play. We're running the same play. That's why Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, man. And I'm going to go ahead and answer that question too. Yes, he's the greatest of all time. He's out there. He's commanding. He's a leader. Everybody that's around him is playing better because Tom Brady's on the field. As a field general, as a quarterback, he gets an A for sure, and without a doubt in my book. Statistically, yeah, I agree with them, B. But as far as just an overall player, guy in the field, he gets an A. As far as Mahomes' legacy, he's still so young. He's already got a Super Bowl. He's gonna win more. I mean, they're too good. And I don't see any way he doesn't get another one. They do need to go draft him another wide receiver. I think that would be nice. But I don't think it tarnishes his legacy. He's so young; it's too soon to say.
Yeah, right. They're going to lose DeMarcus Robinson and Sammy Watkins in free agency. Byron Pringle is actually – I love Byron Pringle so much. I hope he gets a chance next year to take more snaps.
Chris Godwin.
That would be nice. We don't have the money for that, though, unfortunately. We're fighting very much against the cap.
I don't believe in salary cap hell anymore, man. Everybody always restructures those contracts. They can find a way.
That's a good point. But let's talk about Chris Godwin, and let's talk about these other skill players in this game, skill position guys. Talk about the guys on both sides of the ball. Give me your thoughts on the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Don't have to touch on every single one, but ones that kind of caught your eye and how they performed in this game. Let's start with you, Brad.
Sure. Tight ends. You got to love how Gronk looked. It's almost like they saved him the entire year for that one game. It helps that they were against, I believe, the 28th ranked defense against tight ends, I believe. So that might have just been luck of the draw, or maybe they were saving them. I don't know. But tight ends looked great. Wide receivers, it was kind of shocking to see how non-existent Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were. I don't think I would have bet on that to start the game, and I don't think, it was an instance of the Chiefs shutting down the Bucs wide receivers. I think it was, again, just more of a game plan thing where we're going to target the tight ends because they're not defending the middle well, and we have time to pick them apart. And I think the running back position, the Chiefs are interesting. I don't know what to make of that because CEH had an incredible year, but he was also hurt. Like he was just now fighting back from that injury that he had. I think he had 2 weeks of being out, and then this was his first game back. So I don't know what to make of that. And Le'Veon Bell didn't get enough work for me to make a determination on if he's done or if he's not done. I think when we're in the age of timeshares, like it's tough to determine skill sets. Rojo had a pretty non-existent game in the Super Bowl, but we know the type of running back he is. It just happened. Lenny had the hot hand, so he was getting all the carries. So it's tough to make anything of the running back position these days in a timeshare.
No, agreed, and that's the day and age we are in the NFL. No, usually bell cows except for a couple teams, so it's very interesting to try to assess fantasy value. JJ, what about you? Some skill position players that caught your eye this game?
Well, what caught my eye in a negative way was everybody in the Chiefs receiving core outside of the big two. Do y'all know how many yards that they all combined for?
I think it must have been something like 11 or something.
They combined. I'm including like 5 guys. So Sammy Watkins, DeMarcus Robinson, McCole Hardman, and Byron Pringle. It looks like they combined for about like 28 yards, something like that. Something ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, McCole Hardman went 2 for 4 in the Super Bowl. Do you guys know who the Chiefs passed on in the NFL draft?
DK Metcalf, and I said it at the time that you needed to draft. You needed to draft DK Metcalf. I get a lot of things
Here's
wrong.
Here's the emotions coming out of David. David
was something I said
this episode.
Getting ramped up.
That was something I said at the time, and again, I will admit when I'm wrong a lot. That was one thing I said. They need to go get this guy.
Oh yeah, it's not even just DK Metcalf. They also passed on Terry McLaurin and Deontay Johnson, who went like right after him. So for me, it's what's Kansas City going to do going forward outside of the big two? I mean, Travis Kelce's getting older now. He only has maybe 2-3 years left. They got to go get them a playmaker, man. They don't have another playmaker. I mean, McCole Hardman's fast. I don't know how good of a wide receiver he actually is, though. That was my big takeaway from them, and a big reason why I think, other than obviously Mahomes getting pressured and running around for his life, there was still no separation, man. If you go back and watch those highlights, those Bucs defenders were all over those guys. As far as, obviously Travis Kelce's great. Tyreek Hill's great. Going over to the Bucs, Chris Godwin is one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. That was a frustrating game. I'm not giving up on Godwin. If he comes back to Tampa Bay, I'm worried. I more so want to see what they do with Antonio Brown. I do think Godwin's better off as a slot wide receiver. He's a dynamic, fast guy that can kind of find ways open in the middle of the field through the zones or beat a guy deep. And he didn't really have that role this year. And as we saw, he wasn't really as dynamic as he was in 2019. Mike Evans, obviously he wants to come back to Tampa Bay, man. I saw him saying that, he's in a contract year. He'll take less money. I don't know what that would do for his fantasy value. I think it would probably keep it kind of where it was where we were heading into the season, if not a little further back, just because, there's so much talent in Tampa Bay, and it kind of looks like they're trending towards being more of a run-heavy team as long as they have Tom Brady. And that's what he prefers. That's where he's best. When he has a good run game, he can kind of, play action, figure out where to go with the ball, figure out what the defense is doing, come up and man. I think that's best for them. So I do think, Evans is going to be a good option, like always, next year. And then as far as the running back situation, we've already touched on it. Ronald Jones is I like Ronald Jones more than Leonard Fournette. I think he's one of the most explosive backs in the NFL. He's just banged up this playoff games, and unfortunately, they don't really give him the chance to showcase his full abilities. I know he's not great in the pass game by any means, and that's where Fournette came in. But I do think I like Ronald Jones a lot next year still as well. I think he's going to be kind of undervalued heading into 2021 drafts.
I think it's also kind of. Go ahead.
Has my mic been off this entire time?
Yes. Now that it sounds really clear.
Oh wow.
That's fine. They get to suit in for a surprise at the end. That's the best part. I think it's kind of interesting because I've already heard they said it's a matter of when and not if James White is brought in to that running back room in Tampa Bay because Tom's going to ask for him. So that's going to muddy it up even more with the Tampa Bay running backs if they bring back Fournette too. So that's something to keep an eye on. Doc, finish this discussion out and then let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, I just think it surprised the lack of involvement from the players you would. Kelsey had 10 for 133, had some bad drops. Tyreek Hill had 7 for 73. You'd expect the wide receivers, Godwin and Evans, to do big. Evans had 1 for 31. Godwin had 2 for 9. Fournette had more catches and receiving yards than both of them combined. I don't think you expected that coming in the Super Bowl, but they won, and I'm sure that they'd rather have a ring than put up the stats.
Yeah,
was that short enough for you, David?
That was perfect. That was I almost want to give you a round of applause for that, but I'm not going to do that.
Sending you smooches over the mic.
There we go. Let's move to the next topic here, and that's Buccaneers defense versus Chiefs O-line. And just like in a 30-second or less, how much credit are you giving the Bucs D-line compared to the Chiefs O-line? So are you giving 60% to 40% Bucs D to Chiefs O-line as far as how it kind of contributed to how the game turned out? Kind of give your percentage and then why you feel that way. Let's start with JJ.
Oh man, I would probably put it, I don't want to not give them enough credit, but I would probably put it 60-40 towards the Chiefs O-line just being bad. I mean, Shaquille Barrett was literally just making one move and running past that left tackle on almost every single play. You had Sue breaking free, you had Vita Vea breaking free, you had JPP. I mean, it was ridiculous, man. The offensive line was obviously not right for the Chiefs. It was just way too easy. But at the same time, I mean, that Bucs defense is stacked, especially in that front seven. They made it difficult. They kind of disguised some of their blitzes. They hit it pretty well, made it a lot harder on them. And they got to Mahomes so quick. You got to give them some credit. So I would say about 60-40 towards the KCO line being bad.
Yeah, Mike Remmers should not be with the team next year. That was very hard to watch. Doc, what about you? What percentage credit are you giving each?
I'm giving 60-40, but 60 to the Bucs D-line. Because if you think about it, I mean, they not only got after the quarterback, but they played physical. The Chiefs looked scared out there, not only for the offensive line, but the receivers were dropping balls. They looked like they were wincing every time that they were going to get hit. And I think from the first play of the game, the Bucs set the tone to be physical. And I think that trend continued, which is why I give them that edge.
All right, Brad, what about you?
I'm probably going 80-20 with the the Chiefs offensive line getting most of the credit for being bad. That Bucs D, it's very stacked, but they were stacked when the Chiefs played the Bucs in the regular season, and Ty Hill had like 250 yards on him. Like, I love that my man Todd Bowles is getting all the credit, and hopefully he gets a coaching job again after this. But I think it's fair to say that, that Chiefs offensive line is excellent at keeping Mahomes at least, relatively fresh, or giving him enough time that he can do something amazing. And that's really all he needs, because he was doing amazing things with no time in the Super Bowl. So I think this was mainly, a showing that Eric Fisher is incredibly important to this team.
And he tore his Achilles. He might not even be back next year. So that's going to be, they need to draft some tackle. The Chiefs don't pay O-line. That's the system that they do. They draft late O-linemen, and when their contracts are up, they just swap more and more guys, and they paid for their tackles, but the interior three they don't pay for. And that's going to have to change because both tackles aren't guaranteed to be back for next season. So that's going to be seeing how that plays out. And good job giving credit to Todd Bowles, because think people forget he led a similar Jets team to what they have now to 10 wins not too long ago. A team that's been struggling to get 2 or 3 the last few years. So I think he hopefully will get a coaching opportunity.
I can't imagine if, Andy Reid had to miss that game because of what happened with his son. If that same thing had happened and Eric Bieniemy got all the credit for blowing that Super Bowl, who knows what would happen for his future.
Wow.
So I don't know.
That's a great point. It would have been unfair, but you're right. Those probably would have been whispering out there. It's crazy, honestly. And I'm sure, I don't want to give excuses. I'm sure that had to be weighing on Andy.
No doubt.
For part of the game. Let's go to the last part of this game that we're going to talk about, and that's the penalties. And Eric, I'm going to start with you. Did you think the game was called correctly? Too many flags for your liking? Your thoughts on the officiating overall?
The officiating was terrible in the first half, and I am all about the Chiefs losing, but some of those calls were egregious. I mean, the pass interference from Gronk in the end zone when it wasn't even a catchable ball.
That was Mike Evans.
That was Mike Evans? I thought Mike Evans was the one on the sideline. That one was kind of BS too.
I mean, they're 2 BS on Mike Evans, but continue.
Yeah, so I think that it wasn't called consistently. And, David, I know you live tweeted through the show. Anyone that had even in 5 followers that said something about how bad the officiating was, you made sure you retweeted it. That wasn't the reason why the Chiefs lost, but I think when stuff like that happens, especially when we found out in the past that there's been games that have been fixed, especially, in another sport, but the NBA, you just can't help but think like, is there an incentive? Is somebody betting this? Because we've seen money ruin some things, and capitalism is a real thing. Like I said, the refs aren't the reason why that the Bucs won the game, but they were clearly favored with those penalties.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can go to my Twitter and see my emotions. I'm not going to echo them on here, but like you said, ultimately they would have lost regardless, just with the O-line, D-line difference. But I've watched a lot of games, and I've never seen things almost as one-sided as what I watched. And it makes me think of the Jacksonville Patriots game from 2017, where Miles Jack had that fumble return for a touchdown. And I remember the game being pretty much every single penalty was against that Jacksonville vaunted defense. And we have a friend that's a Jags fan, and he said, brother, what you're going through now is what I went through in 2017. He said, welcome to the Brady bias. And I'd never been fully immersed into it until this happened. So it's a real thing. I think it actually, like you said, whether it's betting, whether it's just that it's Tom Brady and the refs just have those different rules, like it's like LeBron James in basketball, whatever it is, there definitely might have been something at play. And I'm going to stop myself before I go on a tangent.
So before you get to the next person, I think that they gave the Bucs the calls in the first half because they thought it was going to be a closer game. They wanted the Bucs to have the lead because they knew that Mahomes would come back. I think if they knew the rest of the game was going to play out the way it was, they wouldn't have made those calls.
I agree with you, and I'll stop myself there. Go ahead, Brad.
To everything Eric's saying, there's a great podcast. I'm going to do a little free plug here. There's a great podcast called Whistleblower, which basically goes into, a huge biography and background story of Tim Donaghy, who was the NBA ref who got caught up in the game fixing scandal. That's a great listen, and it really details how refs can influence the game and how they did influence the game for the NBA. In terms of what we watched in the Super Bowl, I guess I was watching a different game. I did not think it was that big a deal. Not at all in the slightest. Like, sure, some of the pass interference calls could have been, uncatchable balls, but at the very least, you could have called holding on them. Like, it's not like it swung the game in any which way. I think Eric makes a good point that, officials can have a little bit of a game swinging bias where, maybe you call something that might have been ticky-tack or 50-50 call. You call it a certain way because you want to anticipate what might happen later in the game. I see that. It very well could have happened, but I didn't see anything egregious where I was like, okay, this game's being fixed.
That's fair. I mean, everybody I know is not necessarily thinking it was that bad. That's fine. JJ, I feel like I feel you siding with the Chiefs fans on this one. Am I wrong?
Well, as a personal victim of 28-3, and Brady bias is real. I will say that. I mean, it's when you have 90 more penalty yards than your opposition. I think it was, or somewhere close to that. I just feel like something was off. Now the calls on Rashad Breeland, I think those were pretty bad. Especially the one that was bad was when he was kind of trailing behind Evans. He kind of tripped up and his hand like kind of tapped his heel, and you can blatantly see Evans looks like he just flops. They throw the flag on that one. I did not like that call at all. I thought they were, they didn't really let the Chiefs secondary, play way too aggressive. And you can probably go back and, watch in all 22 or whatever highlight tape and see DBs doing what the KC defenders were doing 90% of the time. I thought those refs were being way too aggressive with their secondary. But at the same time, I feel like the game wouldn't, it may have been a little bit closer, but I think Tampa Bay still would have won the game. I don't think it affected the outcome.
Yeah, that's I think why Chiefs fans, including myself, aren't sitting here still live tweeting how pissed we are about it, because the game obviously was still going to be a loss for us with the interior, how it was played. But the pass interference in the end zone, when it's Giannis couldn't have jumped and caught that ball. Like, let's be real. So that ball, and then there was the one on the sideline that Matthew picked off that Mike Evans wasn't even in the play. He was literally on the side. It was a little of a ticky-tack 50-50 call as far as a little handsy thing, but he wasn't even in the play. You got to let the guys play, I think, at that point. You don't want to decide the game in the Super Bowl.
David says I'm going to stop myself, but then saves his rant towards the end.
You get like 5 to 10, or I think it's like 5 yards to bump. But after that, it's a hold or it's a pass interference. I agree, you don't have to call it, but it is a pass interference.
I did see some Packers fans putting, so what is this then? And it's the one on Allen Lazard that changed the game that wasn't called.
So it should have been called.
So it's, again, if you're going to do that, you got to do it like both ways. If you're going to be overly aggressive about things like that, and then in the Packers Bucks game, they were letting them play. They weren't calling anything, and then all of a sudden they called that out of nowhere.
Listen,
and in this,
I'm a firm believer that in every sport, I believe in robot umps. I believe in robot refs. Like, there's no reason to have human error be this much of an impact in a game that means so much financially and mentally for everybody involved.
Well said, Brad. Well said. And we'll close that discussion out on that. And that was some great Super Bowl debating. Loved it. Let's move now to our question of the week. And our question of the week usually is sponsored, but we are in the midst of a big transition here on this show that we're going to keep under wraps for about another week or so. And you guys will hear it first on Twitter, what's going to be happening. But for now, no free advertising. So we're going to go right to the question of the week. And that is, would you rather lose multiple Super Bowls in a row or not make it at all? And so to add the second part of that question, if you are okay with losing multiple in a row, where would you draw the line as, okay, this is enough? And let's start with you, JJ.
I mean, I'd rather lose multiple Super Bowls in a row for the rest of my life than never make a Super Bowl. At least you get to experience it, right? means you have at least a good team. You just got beat by the best.
You could probably become numb after you've lost like 10 in a row. You're like, okay, it doesn't even affect you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you could still fake yourself out and be like, hey, man, we might do it this year. We might do it this year. And then you lose. Oh, it sucks. We'll do it again next year. Maybe we'll get it back. Maybe we'll get us one. And yeah, I would rather keep teasing myself. I mean, that's kind of what I do with Atlanta sports anyways. So it works for me.
That's very true. You've been battle tested, my friend. So that is definitely, I can understand that answer. What about you, Doc?
I'd rather not make the Super Bowl. I feel like that's got to be so deflating to get one win away and to constantly lose. Like, think about when your career's over, you're going to say, wow, I was on this big stage and could never capitalize. I'd rather be like, if you didn't make the Super Bowl, I played well. It wasn't the other people. But if you can get there consistently and never win, yeah, that would haunt me.
I can understand that. Obviously, you saw it last year with the Niners and that emotion. You're like, I don't want to go through that multiple times. So I get it, man. I get it. What about you, Brad?
I'd probably rather never make a Super Bowl because if you keep making it, your expectations change, right? Like you look at the Chiefs, like you guys won the Super Bowl last year and you got there this year. You're super disappointed, because you lost. But if you didn't even get there, you didn't make the playoffs, I don't know how you'd feel. You'd probably be even more disappointed. You wouldn't know what to do with the franchise, whether to tear it down, who to keep, who to trade. I'm a Washington fan, so I haven't sniffed the playoffs since, well, I guess this past year. But I feel like it didn't really count because it was terrible and we had a losing record. Like that RG3 year where we actually had a winning record and a dynamic quarterback, that was the most fun I had as a Washington fan in my entire life of being conscious.
And all y'all had to do was start Taylor Heineke all year. That's what y'all should have done.
Exactly.
Also, if you don't play in the Super Bowl, you're saving hits on your body.
Very true. And part of the fun of doing this is not to make the playoffs. It's that, you have the hope of winning the Super Bowl. So if you just get there and you never make it, like think about those Bills fans that got their 3 Super Bowls in a row and they lost every single one of them. They're still chasing that. Like that's something that each one, like, you go on ESPN and every time the playoffs rolls around, they're doing a little mini documentary on those fans. So it's not a feeling that I envy, and I'd rather be on the winning side.
Fair enough. I think you guys represented your points for your answers very well. So I would, if I'm being honest, having gone through both sides of it the last 2 years, I think I would rather go and lose just because everybody's watching your team on that big stage. So you still get the rush of watching them play. And
David, coming from a guy where his team lost when they were 97% to win in the fourth quarter, you don't want that.
And another thing is everybody has an opinion on the team that you've watched the entire year that they're probably just watching for like the first or second time. That's incredibly annoying for somebody like me who likes to argue with people.
Well said, Brad. Well said. Let's move to our final thing of the night, and that's our game of the week. My basketball fans, stand up. You guys know, JJ, tell me you know where that's from.
What's that? NBC?
The NBA on NBC? There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most iconic music, I think. I even got Brad smiling over there. I love it. So our game of the week this week is supposed to be hosted by John. He could not make the show tonight, so Brad is stepping in as the host of the game this week. Brad, what are we playing?
John always comes through with the questions. We're playing a game called Philosopher or Coach. I'm going to read you a quote. You're going to tell me if it's from a philosopher or a coach. If you can guess the philosopher or a coach, you'll get an additional 1 point. If you get that it's a philosopher or a coach, you get 1 point. So let's start it off. I'll do the same rotation each time. We'll go JJ, Dave, and then Doc. So the first quote.
Oh, yes.
Treat a man as he is, and he will remain as he is. Treat him as he could be, and he will become what he should be.
That's got to be a philosopher. Am I supposed to guess who?
Oh, yeah.
You can get the extra point if you get the philosopher right.
Oh, man. Socrates. I have no idea.
I'm going to go philosopher. I'll go Aristotle.
By the way, keep track of your own scores.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm going to go coach, and I'm going Vince Lombardi.
1 point for Eric. It's a coach, and it's Jimmy Johnson.
All right.
All right, number 2.
End the game.
Number 2. We don't live in our fears. We live in our hopes.
I'm going to go coach. I'll say Mike Krzyzewski.
I'm going to go coach, and I'm going to go Don Shula.
I'm going to go philosopher, and I'm going to go Confucius.
It is a coach, and it's Mike Tomlin. That's a point for Dave and JJ.
That's first name right.
There you go. All right, number 3. Success is not forever, and failure isn't fatal.
I'm Well, we got two for coach. We'll go coach again, and I'll go Vince Lombardi.
I'm going to go philosopher. I'm going to go Plato.
Oh, David, look at you.
I've learned just from doing this game so many times. I know like 5 of them.
I mean, it would totally be a John thing to say, I'm going to do 3 coaches in a row. But I'm going to go philosopher. I'm going to go Confucius. I'm going to double down on this answer.
It's a coach, and it's Don Shula.
That's what I said last time. Oh, man. Should have just waited another one.
All right, here we go. Number 4. If we were supposed to talk more than we listen, we would have 2 mouths and 1 ear.
All right, I'm finally going to go philosopher. And I'm going to go random name, Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Whoa.
Where did that come from?
Wow.
I just remember him from English class, man. I don't know any philosophers.
Oh, man. I'm going to go philosopher, and I'll go Plato again.
I'm going to go philosopher and Aristotle.
Philosopher Mark Twain.
Oh, man.
I'm not even sure if Mark Twain's a philosopher, but
I was going to say, is Mark Twain a philosopher?
That's such a
Yeah.
stretch.
He's an author, a novelist.
either way, you guys get the point. All right.
So wait,
number 5.
is there 10?
There's 10, but we can shorten it to 5 if you want. I know we're
I
kind of
will-
running over.
We can we can do the 10. I've got 2.
All right.
I got 2.
I think I've got maybe 2. I think I've got 3. Yeah, I might
All
be
right.
wrong.
You got
Look at you cheating over there. All right. Number 5.
4, 5, 3, 2.
A total commitment is paramount to reaching the ultimate in performance.
I'm going to go coach. And I'm going to say, oh, man, these are tough. Trying to think of all these people. We'll go Tom Landry.
I'll go coach, and I'll go Vince Lombardi.
I'm going to go coach. I'm going to say Bill Parcells.
It is a coach, and it's Tom Flores.
Mm.
All right. Number 6. The life of man is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
Philosopher Confucius.
Philosopher Socrates.
Philosophy Aristotle.
Philosopher Thomas Hobbes.
These were getting
That was my
right.
next guess.
Here we go. Number 7. No man's knowledge here can go beyond his experience.
It's got to be a philosopher. Aristotle, philosopher.
I'm gonna go coach. I'm gonna go Mike Holmgren.
I'm going to go coach. I'm going to say Vince Lombardi.
It's a point for JJ. Philosopher John Locke. Number 8. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it.
I'm going to say coach. And I'll go with Jimmy Jones.
I'm gonna go coach, and I will go with.
Jimmy Johnson, sorry. I said the wrong last name.
What I said.
I'll go coach, and I'll go Bill Cowher.
I'm at the point now where I need to start playing catch-ups. So I'm going philosopher and I'm going Socrates.
Point for Eric. It's a philosopher. Negative point for me. I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name. Epicurus.
I don't even know.
Yeah, I've never heard of him. All right, so number 9. We're almost there. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit.
Coach Vince Lombardi.
I'm pretty sure that I have to go different to try to top him. I'll say philosopher, and I'll go Socrates.
I think it's definitely a philosopher. It's either Socrates or Aristotle, and I'm going Aristotle.
Whoa. 2 points for Doc. Philosopher and it's Aristotle.
That like the second time it's ever happened where they've gotten both of
I
them.
think so.
That's one of my favorite quotes. So I think I got a 1-point lead now.
I was about to say, what are your scores right now? This is the last one.
I have 4.
I think I have 5. I might be wrong. I'm trying to keep up.
I got 7. So I definitely
Alright.
think that.
Maybe I have 6.
Let's say you
I think I got
there we
6.
go. Let's
Yeah,
say you have 6.
I think you have 6.
I think you do have 6.
Okay.
right,
I was
last
trying to
one.
keep my hand up, but I think I might have lost one.
This one's for all the marbles.
Brad, you should let me go first.
All right, fair. This one's for all the marbles. I'll let Doc go first. When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everybody will respect you.
I feel like the compete and respect, it would totally be a John thing to start with 3 philosophers and end with 3 philosophers. So I'm going to say philosopher Nietzsche.
I'm going to go coach, and I'll go Nick Saban.
I'll go philosopher and Socrates again.
Philosopher Lao Tzu. Congratulations to Doc with the FaceTime and the win.
Doc, I will give you your 1-person cheering.
Yay!
That's more than you.
And you can get your 15-second FaceTime, and then we'll get JJ out of here.
I feel like I always win this game besides when JL comes on. Maybe I have a gift for knowing the difference between philosophy and coaching. Maybe that's a career change that I have coming up. I want to give the rest of my time to JJ, though.
All right, well, JJ, you get the full crowd because you were an awesome guest. Really
Wait,
appreciate...
is that the crowd after the Bucks won the Super Bowl?
Well, where's the mute button? But yeah, JJ, we really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you, the stuff you're working on, or anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Had a great time. You can follow me on Twitter at JJ_JetFlying, no G at the end. I'm currently working up some baseball articles, which none of these people on this podcast may not care about. But of more interest, I am slowly working on my dynasty wide receiver rankings, heading into the draft. So I don't know when those are going to be done. I mean, I'm dealing with, my wife is a nurse. She works night shift. I got a 2-year-old on top of, a full day shift job. So I'm trying to balance all that together. I can't give you any rough estimates when I'll be done with everything, but I'm working on it. And just, check me out on Twitter and give me a follow.
He's a great follow, speaking for someone that sees a lot of his work and the stuff he puts out. Great guy in the fantasy community overall. So make sure you follow him if you're not already. And thank you, everyone, for listening, watching. Make sure you start watching some rookie tape. Keep up with free agency and trades because we don't have any football coming for a while. So stick with us all offseason to not only give you some fun topics and player interviews to listen to, but we'll help you get a jump on your fantasy seasons for next year. We will catch you all next week. See y'all then.